in Beirut, you had what the media are calling clashes. And this is, of course, very interesting framing because this wasn't a clash, okay? Let's break it down very simply. October 14th, you had a protest in front of the Palace of Justice. The people who came to protest were supporters of Hezbollah, of the Amal movement, who's an ally of Hezbollah, and they came there to protest against a judge, Tariq Bitar, because this judge is, he's involved with the investigation regarding the Beirut port explosion last year. You remember when the port blew up, right? So he's involved in the investigation, and people feel that he's extremely biased. They feel that the investigation is being tampered with by the Americans, specifically the U.S. ambassador to Lebanon, because her name is Dorothy Shia, right? So, or Dorothy Shea. This is her picture. So, she was implicated in a plot to frame Hezbollah with the ammonium nitrate, with this explosion, as reported by Al Akhbar, which is a Lebanese daily. And obviously, this is not the first time that she's meddling inside of Lebanon's affairs. I mean, she always does this, right? When it was Hezbollah bringing in fuel, she immediately called up Michel Aoun, the president. She's like, no, let the United States bring in gas from Egypt, electricity from Jordan, which they never wanted to do before. So anyway, people are angry, and they show up to the Palace of Justice in Tayoune district. And then snipers start shooting at them. You have snipers on the rooftops in the surrounding buildings who are sniping the people down below. And this is there's a very clear intent here, which is to kill, because you had 7 people who were martyred, and most of them, it's headshots, things like that. So, this is not like something to do with self-defense or dispersing a crowd. No, they were there to kill people. And actually, just one thing. One of the people who was killed, I'll get to him in a second, but people are wondering who's behind this. And I mean, the consensus here, it's widely believed, it's widely assumed in Lebanon that the people behind this are the Lebanese forces militia, right? So when we say Lebanese forces, you shouldn't confuse that with the Lebanese army, even though it sounds like that. It's something completely different. So the Lebanese forces, this is a right-wing Christian militia that was, founded during the Lebanese Civil War. And, I mean, when you know who they are, like, this should not surprise you. Like, this massacre a few days ago, where they killed 7 people, well, 6, and wounded dozens, this is nothing compared to the other things they did, even though it's still horrific. But they have a history of committing massacres. Literally massacres. They collaborated with the Israelis, which is, I mean, this alone is unbelievable. How can you call yourself Lebanese and then you go and work with someone who's invading your country? This is unbelievable, right? This is the definition of treachery. You work with an occupier. So, the Lebanese forces, they used to receive weapons, funding, you name it, from the Israelis. And with the Israelis, they went in and committed numerous massacres. The most famous one was in 1982, right? So they killed 3,500 people. This is what I'm talking about, right? Sabra and Shatila massacre. So they killed 3,500 Palestinian refugees and Shia Lebanese in Beirut. In plain sight of the Israelis. The Israelis knew this was going to happen. They let it happen. They did this together. 3,500 people they murdered. This is one of the massacres. This is one. There are others. So when they kill 7 people, I mean, this is not surprising at all, right? And the head of this Lebanese forces militia, Samir Ja'ja, who's a real piece of work. You can see him over here with with Mike Pompeo, which is really fitting. So he's on the left, and he literally assassinated the Lebanese prime minister. He's killed so many people. It's unbelievable. Like, the fact he's not in jail is crazy. He was in jail for 11 years. but he was given amnesty in 2005, and they released him. He literally assassinated the Lebanese prime minister. Could you imagine someone in the United States killing the president and then committing massacres, and then they get out and they're free? Oh yeah, wait, they are the president. No, but seriously, this is quite crazy, right? That you actually have a guy like this who's walking around free. And so basically, the Lebanese forces, this right wing, this fascist, it's a fascist militia, like really by definition. They're a rival of Hezbollah. They don't like Hezbollah. They don't like the Amal movement. So, there's always a kind of a power struggle. And I mean, Lebanese politics is complicated enough to begin with. But the thing to understand is that, as we said, they've collaborated with Israel. What about today? They collaborate with the United States. They collaborate with Saudi Arabia. Like, this guy's, openly funded by Saudi Arabia. So, they have a history of betraying their own people and working with other countries, with other powers to screw over Lebanon. Okay? And so this investigation into the port explosion, you must understand something. They want to pin this on Hezbollah. Do you know why? Because for decades, they've been trying to disarm Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the only thing that is stopping Israel from shitting on Lebanon. Okay? Who liberated South Lebanon? Not the Lebanese army, certainly not the Lebanese forces militia, Hezbollah, right? Not even the UN could do that. My parents were serving there in UNIFIL in South Lebanon. Not even the UN could liberate South Lebanon. It was Hezbollah, okay? So in 2006, the Israelis tried to screw around again with Lebanon, and Hezbollah pushed them back, blew them out of the water, literally. So they're scared of Hezbollah because they haven't bombed Lebanon since. Just to give you an idea. So they really want to disarm Hezbollah. And one of the ways they want to do that is to pin the whole port explosion on Hezbollah. So see, they were storing such and such ammonium nitrate. They were storing weapons. They're a danger to society. We have to get rid of their weapons, so on and so on. But it's not about the port explosion. It's not. They didn't actually have anything to do with it. It's just because Israel doesn't want any resistance when they try to invade Lebanon or attack Lebanon. The United States doesn't want any resistance when they fund terrorists in Syria. Like Hezbollah's been fighting in that theater as well, inside Syria against Al-Qaeda, against ISIS. So the U.S. and Israel, they don't want any more resistance to their imperialist projects. And the Lebanese forces, militia, and other actors inside Lebanon, they want power. They want to ascend to power. So what do they want to do? They want to kill off the competition because Hezbollah is very popular. So they're trying to pin the port explosion on them. And, they don't like it that people are coming out and protesting against, the involvement of not just this corrupt judge, but, the U.S. ambassador. So it's a very politicized thing. Regardless what you think. Let's say that you don't agree with any of that. Let's say that, you are 100% convinced that Hezbollah did the port explosion. Okay, what gives you the right to shoot at protesters, though? Because you must understand, these people were unarmed, and this is a lie that they've been repeating in the media, in Lebanese media, international media. They've been saying that people came to the protests with weapons. They even have videos. Look. So you can see here, they say Hezbollah and their supporters marched with guns protesting over Beirut port blast judge. And this is a huge, huge lie, because what happened here, this is after the snipers started killing people. These are the martyred. This is after. So after the snipers began shooting people, then you had MS supporters, Hezbollah supporters coming with weapons from nearby districts to defend the protesters. That's a huge difference. Just to give you an idea, one of the victims you can see here in the bottom right is a mother. She was in her home. She got shot standing at the window in her own home, waiting for her kids to come back from school. So she wasn't even at the protest, never mind with a weapon. So how do you explain her death? You can't. She was murdered. She wasn't at the protest. She was literally just standing in her own home, and they shot her. They killed her. So this lie that people came with weapons is completely absurd. Even the Lebanese army, they put out a tweet here saying that protesters were shot at. They didn't say armed personnel were shot at or armed protesters, just protesters. And the Minister of Interior also confirmed this. So this is a massacre. This is a massacre. It's a terrorist attack. Call it what you want. It's an ambush, but it's not a clash. A clash is when you have two sides, two people who are, fighting with each other. And maybe you had that afterwards. You know, because as we showed you, when people came to defend the protesters afterwards, but what happened initially, it's an ambush, you know? When, for example, the police show up somewhere after someone's been murdered, you don't call it a clash because the police are firing back at the criminal. It's still a murder. It's still an ambush, right? So, I mean, just look at how they've been portraying this in the mainstream media. It's not just in English language media, even in Lebanon, because again, you know, Lebanon is very fractured. You have various parties, various newspapers with their own affiliations, and so you have of course people in Lebanon who are skewing the facts. But let me just show you a few headlines. This is from Al Jazeera. They say Beirut armed clashes. Like, this is so vague. Beirut armed clashes rattle distressed residents. Dude, what is this fucking headline? This could be from any year, literally any year in Lebanon. I don't know if that's 2021. I don't know if this is 1984. I have no clue what this fucking headline is from. It's so vague. It's so vague. You know why they're doing this? I'll tell you in a second. Here's another one from the New York Times. What did the New York Times say? Deadly clashes in Beirut escalate fears over Lebanon's dysfunction. Again, I have no clue what this means. This could be from any fucking year. Is this 2004? Is it 1999? I have no clue. What year is this? Right? This is in the Washington Post. Day-long firefight racks Beirut, evoking memories of Lebanon's civil war. Now they're inching a bit closer. This is correct, because what's so shocking, what's really distressing about this is these scenes. I mean, dude, I was watching the gun battle live on El Mayadeen. Right? So, like, I was watching it live. You had bullets going off. Like, it's ridiculous. People firing RPGs. It really looked like Lebanon's civil war. It really looked like that again. And this is really sad. I mean, this is really messed up. You know, Lebanon had a civil war for 15 years. I mean, the massacres I told you about were part of that, of course. Israel invading Lebanon, occupying Lebanon is part of that. There's so many bad things that happened, right? And so it's very upsetting for people to see that, of course, you know, of course. And no less on these streets. I mean, this area, it was on these very streets where the Lebanese civil war was taking place, right? So it's especially reminiscent. But the thing is, they're keeping these headlines vague because they don't want to tell you who the victims are. They don't want you to know that Hezbollah protesters were shot at, because you're supposed to hate Hezbollah. Most people don't know why. They just, you know, oh, Hezbollah terrorist. Like that's it, right? So they can't tell you that Hezbollah protesters who were unarmed, who were protesting peacefully, were shot at, were ambushed. Because then you would see that this doesn't match with what they usually tell you, where Hezbollah is the bad guy. It doesn't match. So they've been keeping it intentionally vague. Now, I can assure you, if the roles were reversed, and this wouldn't happen, but if Hezbollah had shot at unarmed protesters belonging to the Lebanese forces, it would be in the title. You would see Hezbollah in the title. They would say Hezbollah fired at unarmed protesters. You would fucking see that shit, and you know that. But they didn't mention Lebanese forces here. They didn't even mention who the victims are. You have no clue what year this is from. No context. So, you know, there's no lack of words. They're just doing this on purpose. And as I mentioned, one of the victims. One of the victims was actually killed by the Lebanese army. So this is breaking news from a few hours ago, from earlier today, where CCTV footage was released. I'm not going to show it because YouTube won't let me. And you can see the Lebanese army. I don't know if it's accidentally. I have no clue. They're investigating it. And the CCTV footage is indeed real because, as I said, the army has put out a tweet saying they're investigating it now. So, I mean, it's, you know, it lends credence to the fact that it's real. It's legitimate video. And, of course, it's the guy was 17. Muhammad Tamer is his name. And I wanted just to show you the other victims over here, the other martyrs. There are 7 now, right? 7 in total. And as I said, Muhammad was killed by the Lebanese army. But, you know, if you're going to say these were clashes, when you have a clash, there should be casualties on both sides, shouldn't there? If you have a firefight or a clash, like as they're calling it, shouldn't there be wounded on the other side? You know, whoever's shooting at these protesters, there isn't. There are dozens of wounded, 7 people martyred, and they are Shia Muslims. They're Hezbollah Amal supporters. This is a fact. This is a fact. And so, like I said, this is perfectly in line with the behavior of the Lebanese forces militia. Like, you need to understand something. What they're trying to do here is they want to start a civil war. They want it to be about Shia versus Sunni and Muslims versus Christians. This has nothing to do with that. You know, these Lebanese forces militia, they've killed everyone. They've killed Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims. They've killed Christians like themselves, right? They claim to be Christians. They've killed other Christians. They've killed Armenians, Palestinians. They kill everyone. They're fucking mercenaries. They're murderers. This is a fact. It's a fact. Samir Jaja is found guilty of assassinating so many goddamn people. I can't even count them all to you. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So this is nothing to do with, you know, they want it to be a sectarian. They want to start a sectarian war and plunge Lebanon into chaos again, because this would benefit many actors. As we talked about, it would benefit Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, the United States. They all want this because Lebanon is home to Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is a pillar of the resistance. They want to weaken the resistance. And this is so important to understand. You are never going to hear what I'm about to tell you put into context in the mainstream media or even in independent media. Look at what happened in the last week. This is so important to understand. First, in Syria, Israel and the United States bombed Syria twice in the span of a week, south of Palmyra, okay? They killed one Syrian soldier. They wounded 3 others. Then in Iraq, you had the elections. You had election rigging. You had fighters belonging to the resistance, to the Hashd al-Sha'bi, the Popular Mobilization Forces, who were hampered from voting, right? They had to go travel thousands of miles. You know, I'm exaggerating, but they had to go back to their hometowns to actually be able to participate. They came up with these weird rules at the last second, trying to kneecap the resistance vote inside of Iraq. And then we had this shooting in Lebanon. Right? So 7 people, Shia Muslims, supporters of the resistance of Hezbollah of Amal, shot dead in broad daylight. In Afghanistan, you had 2 mosques that were blown up in Kunduz and in Kandahar. Over 100 people killed or wounded, predominantly Shia Muslims, which is, you know, to provoke Iran, surely. So you have all of these things, 4 major attacks happening in the span of a week. It's very clear who this is aimed at. This is aimed at not just Shia Muslims. It's aimed at the whole resistance. You need to understand this because they want to divide people on sectarian lines. It's not about that. It's about anti-imperialism. It's about resisting occupiers. You know, the Israeli occupiers, the American occupiers, the Saudis who are their puppets. So this is really important to understand. They've been launching coordinated attacks trying to weaken the resistance in all of these countries. So this is really... this is really important to put that into context to understand what's happening. You have to understand also that Lebanon has elections coming up soon. So Samir Jaja, the head of the Lebanese militia forces, this right-wing Christian fascist militia, he knows that he's dead in the water. He has no chance of winning that election. And there are several parties in Lebanon who don't stand a chance, really. And they know that Hezbollah is more popular than them. They're trying to turn public opinion against Hezbollah. What they're trying to do with this attack, they were in Tayune, they were trying to provoke Hezbollah into retaliating. Because if Hezbollah had shot back, and they didn't, you know, they would say, look, Hezbollah is using their weapons against their own people. We have to disarm them. You get the idea? And Hezbollah released a statement with the Amal movement, specifically asking people, do not fucking respond, do not retaliate, don't do anything. Don't do anything in response to these murders, because that's exactly what they want. They want to point the finger then and say, oh, look, Hezbollah is being violent. They want to plunge Lebanon into a civil war. So they know the game here. They know the game here. This is a ruse. It's a provocation. It's trying to get Hezbollah to retaliate, to cause chaos, and they didn't fall for it. And again, they're also, with the elections coming up, they want to turn public opinion against Hezbollah. So you have multiple things here, trying to disarm them, trying to vilify them, trying to sink their chances in the election. It's you know, for God's sake, you know, you're never going to hear anyone break it down like that, the way it needs to be broken down, except maybe in Arabic media. But again, you have this huge divide. So that's what I'm here for, because you're never going to get this on CNN, on New York Times. They can't even report the basic facts. They can't even tell you who was shot. Most people read this headline, they have no fucking clue what's going on. No clue. Like, I mean, what does this clash mean? Were they fighting with you know, swords? Was it a clash with crossbows? What the fuck does this mean? Who was killed here? I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea what year this is from. It's on purpose. They keep it vague on purpose. All right. So I'll just end on one note here, which is you can see the difference again between the mentality, the policy. Hezbollah would never use its own guns to kill other Lebanese. Everyone in Lebanon has guns. Like, you need to understand this. Everyone in Lebanon has guns. Lebanon is like the Wild West, but in West Asia. So, but everyone has guns. The difference is how they use them. Hezbollah is resisting the Israelis, who are invaders. The terrorist groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, who have been funded by the United States and the West. The Lebanese forces, militia, use their guns to kill other Lebanese. They use their guns to kill Armenians. They use their guns to kill Palestinians. They use their guns to kill other Christians. They say we're Lebanese Christian and they go and kill other Lebanese Christians. They have no values. There's no level to which they won't stoop. So they will kill anyone and everyone if it means consolidating power and advancing their own agenda. And they will even collaborate with Israel. I mean, what more do I need to tell you? Like, what more do I need to tell you? They collaborated with Israel to massacre Palestinian refugees. How fucking low can you stoop? I really can't think of many things lower than that. So this is who they are. This is their legacy. This is Samir Jaja. So when he goes massacring Lebanese in broad daylight in Beirut, this is business as usual, right? Make no mistake, because no one would be so ignorant and crazy to do something like that other than him. And of course, at the behest of who? The United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel. These are his backers. Make no mistake. So this is very tragic that these people were killed. And, these attempts to blame, this is really crazy, like these kinds of tweets, these kinds of comments over here, saying that Hezbollah would burn down the country. Hezbollah, they're the victims. They were shot at. What are you talking about? Like, even when unarmed protesters are shot at, they want to victim blame and make them out to be the villains here. This is insane. So, well, I mean, I think it's of course good that Lebanon has not, that it didn't escalate. Thank God, because it could have ended up being much worse. But this is really weird that the army killed someone. So what is that? Why? I saw the video. Why on earth did they do that? This guy, again, was also unarmed. They just shot him. So this is really terrible. And the other protesters as well. Really horrific stuff. So, the next time they tell you that these people were armed, they shot a mother in her own home. She wasn't even at the goddamn protest, let alone carrying weapons. What are you talking about? They make up the wildest fucking lies to justify killing other people. It's insane. It's insane. You should go watch also Rania Khalek's video and hear my colleague Merwa Osman. She did a great thread on Samir Jaja's crimes, all the massacres that he's done. This is who he is. Like, this is who his militia, his party is. Right? It's so long, I can't even read it to you. Just thousands and thousands of people killed. This is who they are. So I just wanted to break this down for you because it is so important to put it in the context of who is doing the shooting. Who are these Lebanese forces? What have they done in the past? What is the agenda that they're trying to accomplish? Who is backing them? And it's so important to put this into context of the investigation, which has been corrupted and meddled in by the United States, and the elections that are coming up soon, and this attempt to attack the resistance on several fronts in Syria, in proximity to Iran, in Iraq, and now in Lebanon. This is very important to understand this. You have to put it into context. And these attempts by the media to obfuscate and to hide, it's so pathetic, it's comical. It really is. So I just wanted to break it down clearly for you, and I hope that kind of, clears things up and helps you to understand what happened more clearly. I actually just finished covering this about Lebanon, what just happened there for my television program on Press TV. So that is going to come out tomorrow. That will broadcast tomorrow. Definitely make sure you go check it out. The URL is different because the United States literally stole the website. So it's not presstv.com anymore. It's presstv.ir. Or you can just go on Google and you type Richard Medhurst to communicate. And you will find my television program. You'll find this episode out tomorrow night. And where I break it down. I also had a great guest on. I had Zainab al-Safar. She's a wonderful journalist from Lebanon. And you should really watch it. Last week I had Stanley Cohen on. He's legendary. I'm gonna put up the full interview here on YouTube soon because we had a really long talk about Israel entering the African Union. Yeah, you heard that correctly. What the fuck? Apparently Israel has observer status in the African Union. I mean, they had it in the previously, 20 years ago. They had it before the Organization of African Unity. I think that's what it was called. It was disbanded and then they formed the African Union. And so for 20 years, Israel's been trying to get back in and get its observer status. Like, it's just insane. They want to normalize themselves with everyone. But that was a great talk with Stanley. He's wonderful. So all of this will be up soon, and I'm very excited for that.